Well, hello, everybody. This is again Dr. Danielle Duperret for the Parent Empowerment Summit, and it's my pleasure today to interview Danielle Dellaquila. Thank you for coming, Danielle.
Thank you for having me, Danielle.
And yeah, two Danielles. So I'm going to read a little bit about Danielle's biography. She holds an MS in nutrition from the University of Massachusetts, as well as a BS in exercise science from the University of Rhode Island. She's recently trained as a functional medicine practitioner from the Kressner Institute for Functional and Evolutionary Medicine. Danielle's experience includes counseling individuals regarding their nutritional needs, running group nutrition programs, and presenting various nutrition health topics to towns, farms, and corporations. In addition to her position with drjockers.com, she's also an adjunct nutrition instructor at local community colleges. Welcome again, and thank you for being with us.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we're going to talk about how to influence children to develop lifelong healthy nutrition habits. So how do we start?
So how do we start? Well, ideally, we're going to start right at birth. Ideally, so this is for all you folks who might be out there who are listening and are currently pregnant or currently thinking about having children and raising them. The best way to begin is after you give birth. What does nature call for? Breast milk. If you're able to breastfeed, that is number one first step to getting your child off to not only the healthiest start, but also to be able to develop a wide palate. Breast milk, they've shown through studies, the taste of breast milk changes depending on what the mother is eating. So as opposed to a baby who is fed formula, which is going to be most likely the same formula throughout the first year of its life, or however long the child is on formula for, it's going to taste the same. But depending on what mom consumes, breast milk can have a variety of different tastes.
Yeah, I knew that, but not in the way you're talking about, because one of my daughters had allergic reaction when I was drinking milk or having dairy, so I had to stop that for her. But I never thought about the taste that milk could have.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and when I was younger, when I had younger children, I have teenagers now, but when I was younger, when my children were younger, I was a La Leche League leader, and so I'd go and have meetings every month for a room full of young mothers. And then I also had friends outside of that who weren't breastfeeding, who at like the local family center I'd meet. And once these children started eating, it always amazed me that the children who were breastfed, and sometimes they were still currently breastfed as toddlers, as I did extended breastfeeding till my children were about 3 years old. So these children would eat, sort of tastier, more robust foods that had more flavor in them, like hummus. And I can remember, I have pictures of my kids, eating the whole thing of hummus, like out of the container with it all over their face. I have this one picture in mind, where these other kids, like, it was too strong of a taste. They couldn't, they had to eat things that are very plain, only like, the white crackers, or maybe they'd eat the goldfish or something really, really bland. And then I ended up reading a study one time, I think in my La Leche League meeting, that stated that the breast milk does help with the child's palate, because it does change in taste.
I never knew that. Thank you for that detail. Yeah, I know breast milk is absolutely amazing. I heard too that it changes if the child is sick, for instance. It has the antibiotic that the child needs. So
Yep.
it's an amazing formula that the chemical formulas cannot make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and then from there, like, if you're able to start, right off from square one. A lot of parents find themselves with 5 and 8 year olds who are stubborn and not eating, and we'll get to that point. But ideally, if you start from the beginning, the breast milk, and then as you start to introduce food somewhere between 6 months and 1 year, depending on the child, everyone is, really different. And I think doctors, pediatricians are now recommending to wait until 6 months. But I know when my kids were smaller, it was more like, oh, 4 months, you could start them on rice cereal. And, for me, my baby's first foods were avocado. So I
Yeah.
think it's a really good idea, again, to start off with some really nutrient dense whole foods, not something that's been, and fresh foods, right? Because I think the idea behind the whole rice cereal thing is that it's non-allergenic and so forth and so on. But, so are a lot of real whole foods to start off with, sweet potato and butternut squash or delicata squash or some of the other winter squashes, starting off with some real good whole food that will provide the baby with lots of good quality nutrients.
And you're right, they all different. And what I tell parents is, you'll know when your baby is ready for food, because they're gonna, every time you eat, they're gonna start reaching for what you're putting in your mouth and say, okay, that might be time. And some it might be 4 months, some it might be 8 months.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And so from there, I think parents sort of lose track of the fact that they're the baby's first influence on introduction of food. When you have picky eaters in your house, I'm pretty sure only the parents can be to blame. Because
Okay.
they're sort of the ones who are, and I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean that in a just being conscious of what they're bringing into their house. The parents have to be a good role model.
Yeah.
The children are going to see what they're eating. And, obviously in the beginning, they're going to be curious, just like you said, about what mom and dad are eating or what mom and mom are eating or whomever. So they're going to be attracted to those foods. But if mom and dad are eating Cheetos or Doritos or, junk food, and if that's what's in the house, colorful things, food with,
Sugar.
artificial or high fructose corn syrup or sugar or, things that are brightly artificially colored, those things are going to be really attractive because they're sweet, they're, colorful. So those are the things that, and the marketing, they do such a great job marketing towards children, with all of the different characters that they have out there and the bright colors and so forth and so on. So really, if we're able to control it from the very beginning, introducing and just having those real whole foods, like I said, the sweet potato and good quality grass-fed dairy products, yogurt without having lots of sweeteners added to it. And I do say the grass-fed dairy products because to me, these not only contain more nutrients themselves, like vitamin A and omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin K2, but it's also it's a lot less inflammatory in the body versus dairy products where the animals consumed lots of omega-6 fatty acids from genetically modified corn and soy, leading to, inflammation in the body.
Yeah, I saw a difference with my son when he was probably about a year old. We had to evacuate where we lived. We had a flood. And I had given him some organic mozzarella stick, and he didn't have a problem. But the place where we went, they just gave the children some regular mozzarella stick, and all of a sudden started to pull on his ears and complain. So I
Wow.
stopped that, and yeah, that was a big difference between two different kind of mozzarella sticks. So I think it's very important.
And it was great that you noticed that because maybe some parents wouldn't have been able to make that connection.
Well, I had a daughter before when I was eating dairy products and I was nursing her, she was having problems. So I was already a little bit into the dairy thing.
I
That was
understand.
years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Way back when. And one of my other things that I can remember doing when my kids were toddlers and young children is I would notice that if I waited too long and they got really hungry, it had been way too long between meals, I would notice that that's when it was difficult to appease them on choices of what they wanted to eat.
Yeah.
So I kind of came up with this strategy. Maybe they were like 2 and 4 years old, where I was like, I'm going to put out a plate of vegetables and a thing of hummus and cut up some avocado and put some olives out before anyone's asking for food. So this way, even if it was like, 5 o'clock and before dinner, like, go ahead and ruin your dinner by eating vegetables. I don't
Yeah.
care. That's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I did notice that it was a great way to eat them, have them get a lot of vegetables to eat, and B, they weren't picky about it. They weren't saying, "Mom, I don't want that. No, I want this, this, this." So I was really happy that I discovered that at an early age.
Yeah, I was lucky to have vegetable garden, and I remember two of my kids. The oldest one loved peas. In going to the garden, getting the peas, and removing the outer edge and getting the little peas, and she loved peas. And the other one was strawberries. We always had to have a strawberry patch. So I would encourage parents, if you can just have one potted plant and just show kids where food comes from, and they can nurture their plant.
I completely agree. So yes, if you have a good green thumb, and like you said, you don't have to grow a whole garden, but just grow a couple of things so that kids see, oh wow, like I'm gonna plant this seed, and then this lovely plant comes off of it, and then out of the plant comes this lovely fruit or lovely vegetable, and it's great for children to witness the miracle of nature. I belonged and still belong to a community supported agriculture farm, CSA farm. So I started about 16 years ago, was the first year I did it. I was extremely pregnant with my second daughter, who will be 16 in June, when the farm started. And I can remember picking strawberries, days before.
Yeah.
Feeling very uncomfortably pregnant. But my children have grown up with, from June through through October or November, depending on the farm, going and getting our food fresh from the farm. And it's an extremely amazing value. So most CSAs, I believe, are all organic. So you pay a share and you get a share of vegetables for the season. Sometimes the shares are too big and you can share them with someone else. You can get a half a share. But basically, if you went, so in the middle of summer, I come out with like these 3 huge bags of produce, some of which are already picked for you, but things that are kind of more labor intensive to pick, like the strawberries or the peas like you're talking about, or the cherry tomatoes. Those you go out in the field and pick yourself. But it's such a great experience for the kids. They love it. And now, they come and they still help me now that they're teenagers. But I love to go out into the fields and see the little kids with wonder on their faces, picking their vegetables and their fruits, and and it's like all over their faces.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's they're when food is picked at their peak ripeness, they just have so many more nutrients to them. And also the way these farms grow their food, they rotate the crops in such a way, and they put animals on the farm to replenish the soil. So it's all done very smartly. So I think that these types of foods are more nutrient dense, just because they're picked at ripe peakness, and also because the soil is replenished properly.
And I believe it's getting more popular. Even here in Las Vegas, we have an orchard where children can go, or adults can go pick up their own fruits and berries. And we have some farms around where you can have produce delivered to your home, fresh for the week. And every week you get a bag of fresh food.
It's lovely. I'm happy to hear that even in Las Vegas.
Even in Las Vegas, yeah.
That's amazing.
And when I came to Las Vegas about 12 years ago, we did have a few farmers market, and you had one booth that had some vegetables. And now about every day you have quite a big farmers market where you can go.
That's great. That makes
so
sense.
yeah. So people are becoming more and more aware, and it's great if we can start with young children. But sometimes it's, we miss the boat.
Sometimes we miss the boat, absolutely, and this could be really difficult. I think it's it's um, it's very abundantly clear when we go out to dinner, and adults get an adult menu and children get a children menu.
And what's on
Um,
the children menu, I wouldn't give to my kids.
what's on the children menu is everything white, right? Everything's
Yeah.
white. There's pasta, there might be rice, there's a white grilled cheese, there's French fries,
French
chicken.
fries and, yeah, deep fried chicken or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think our culture is very guilty of sort of creating this crutch for our children so that they end up not eating real food. So yeah, so what do you do if your kids are 5 and 8 or 7 and 9 or whatever, and you're just really wanting to make some changes in your family? And I think the best strategy is to get children involved in the whole process. So in this day and age where there's so many different recipes that are online, I think it's a great idea for a family to sit down maybe once a week and go through either a cookbook or go through recipes online in which foods, maybe like pick a few foods that that they like that are whole foods, and sort of build off of those types of foods that they're already going to like. And maybe we could come up with a compromise, like, but let's try one new food for you every meal, or maybe a couple times a week, or whatever the bargain is. And so you all create a shopping list together as a family. You go shopping together as a family, and I think
Yes.
it's important to look at the labels. The foods, I like to say we should be buying the foods that don't have labels. Those are the foods we should be eating. The foods that don't have the labels, that don't have the nutrition facts on there, that don't tell you how many grams of sugar, because you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But those foods that you do end up buying that have labels, I think it's important to show the kids what that means, because a lot of kids have no idea what that means. So maybe look in your own cabinets. I think another thing to do is to have like a family cabinet clean out, a pantry clean out, and and maybe go through and see like what we should keep and what we shouldn't keep. And a great, when I do presentations in school, one of the best visuals for young children, for teenagers, for whomever, even for adults, is to look at how many grams of sugar is in something and do the teaspoon demonstration. Every 4 grams of sugar is equal to 1 teaspoon. So if you've got something, those Odwalla drinks that everyone thinks are healthy,
Yeah.
53 grams of sugar, you divide that by 4, and we're getting what? How's my math? It's like a third, 30, not quite, 20 something teaspoons of sugar. So sugar is hidden in places that we have no idea, and the quantity of it, the fact that we measure it in grams, I think is really hard for people to visualize what that means. And so I like to do the teaspoon thing.
Okay, well, grams is fine with me. I grew up in Switzerland and we use grams.
You can fix your grams. Yeah.
But
unfortunately,
yes.
nothing.
Teaspoon, everybody can represent what a teaspoon is, so that's fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, I got trapped. I have 2 grandchildren now, 9 and 10 years old, 2 boys, and we went to the store and they wanted some cereal because they do eat cereals at their parents' house. So, I went to the organic section and there was some nice package, organic. Say, okay, yeah, you can have one. And I didn't even read the label. It's organic. It's supposed to be good. And I tasted 1 spoon and I had to spit it. I'm not used to that much sugar. It was awful. Needless to say, we didn't buy that box anymore. Grandma is making our own breakfast. We make our own waffles, and we don't put sugar in. And you know what? They like it. They know my standards, and they don't mind because waffles with all kind of good stuff. and I put fruits on top, and they're all happy.
I love it. I love it. You're reminding me about cereal. I'll get back to the, how I want to get the children involved, but this is a little side note. When when my daughter's father and I divorced and I moved out, we moved out. At our new house, I was like, girls, we're going to have a no cereal rule in this house.
Yeah.
And I haven't bought a box of cereal in 3.5 years. And so now if they want cereal, we make our own granola.
Yeah, we can do that.
Paleo like granola, or sometimes we'll make one with the oats. But yeah, there's no complaints, and there's nothing like feeding children a breakfast in which are going to satiate them, keep them satisfied for more than half an hour. If kids are eating those high sugar cereals, their blood sugar is going to elevate, and then the insulin's going to elevate, and then the insulin's working pretty strong at that age, so then their blood sugar plummets, and then it might dip a little below, and then they're hungry all over again. And that's like not the best way to start your day. It's like the first part of the roller coaster, and then the entire day ends up being that roller coaster. And to me, feeding your children like whole milk, plain grass-fed yogurt, putting your own nuts and seeds in it, your own berries in it. Maybe if a kid needs a little bit of sweetener, a little bit of maple syrup, a little bit of raw honey, some stevia, some monk fruit, something like that would be such a better way to start the day. Or, these days, if you want to do some baked goods, there's so many things you could do with coconut flour or almond flour, cassava flour. There's a lot of alternatives now that can, because I'm big on, trying to add lots of good fats to keep you full for longer periods of time, so that the kids are not constantly hungry.
Yeah, and if you give them sugar, you yourself as a parent or grandparents, you're going to have a miserable day.
Absolutely.
So if you give them some whole food protein and, some goody stuff, then you're all going to enjoy your day.
Right. Some great pasture raised eggs, fried up, a little bit of coconut oil or grass-fed butter. Excellent way to start the day, for sure. Making frittatas. We make lots of frittatas in my house, so it's a great way to get vegetables into your breakfast, because sometimes vegetables can be a hard thing. Or you can make a green smoothie with lots of good fruit in there to sort of mask the green taste to it. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to work in nutrient dense foods into breakfast, and not have it like be cereal, breakfast that would be void of nutrients besides calories.
And you can make very good things. I make a chocolate mousse with avocados.
Ooh.
And they love it. It has fruits, it has berries, and it's very high nutrients.
Excellent. That sounds delicious. That sounds really good. So as I was saying before, bringing the kids grocery shopping, excellent thing to do. And therefore, I think when they feel like they have choice, it allows them to have a sense of autonomy of what they're eating, rather than mom's making me eat this, I don't want to eat this. But, we came up with this recipe, we all agreed on it. Now we're going to go grocery shopping together. And then you come home. And of course, this is an ideal world. And I know that we're all really busy and everyone has schedules. And I'm not saying this has to be done for every dinner, every evening. But I think that if we can get this worked into, a few nights a week, I think that you'll start noticing your children being a little more flexible and agreeable with what they're eating. And so, if depending on how many kids you have, maybe one kid picks one meal and another kid picks another meal, and maybe a parent picks, and so forth and so on. And then, help prep for the meal too. You help cut up the vegetables, you help, fry them up in the coconut oil, you help, grill your chicken, or, whatever it is you might be making. But I do think that getting kids involved is really key.
And we had that in our farmers market, I think last year, where they had all kind of games for kids, where they had to go okay, to make a salsa, you need these ingredients. Which booth you have them? And they had to write down and then go show that they found the ingredients, and they would get $5 to go buy ingredients. And then, you go home and you make it with your kids.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the microbiome? Because I think it's very present nowadays. People talk about the microbiome. And if we feed our kids properly, they're not going to have too much problems with their microbiome.
Yep. Again, it all starts at birth. It all starts with, mama's microbiome, the state of her microbiome when the baby's born. As the baby passes through the birth canal, good bacteria is secreted, or it could be secreted if mom has the good bacteria. And so the babies end up swallowing a lot of that good bacteria. So again, that's where like step one occurs. I know a lot of times mothers end up having C-sections, and what they're doing now, because they know it's so important, that's how babies first get inoculated with good bacteria, is through the birth canal, because when they're in utero, the gut is sterile, which not a lot of people realize. So they're actually taking vaginal swabs from the mama and putting it in the baby's mouth to inoculate them with good bacteria. So
I hadn't heard about that. That's great.
It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. Pretty amazing. Yep. So yeah. So colostrum. People used to wonder, like, oh, why is colostrum first fed? It must be first produced from the mom, and it must have to do with immunity. But it's not just immunity. They've also figured out that it's loaded with prebiotics. So it's loaded with the food that the good bacteria need to multiply in numbers. So yeah, Mother Nature has this whole thing down.
We just mess it up.
We just mess it up, unfortunately. So again, ideally, vaginal birth, breastfed. So that's kind of like how your gut gets set up. However, maybe it was a C-section and your doctor didn't know about the vaginal swab, and then the baby got an infection and was given antibiotics at birth, and then mom had something going on and she wasn't able to breastfeed. So those are all like bang, 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 3 strikes against you. So baby A that I was talking about is going to have a much better start in life as far as their microbiome development goes versus baby B. So that's sort of the beginning of it. And then from there, the foods we eat, and the sort of atmosphere, the environment around us are all help determine what the microbiome is going to be like. So, for example, if your baby got sick here and there, and you kept taking them to the doctor, and the doctor was one of those antibiotic pushers, bummer. If mom is sort of a germ freak and makes the baby use the hand sanitizer before everything that they put in their mouth, not a good thing for the microbiome. So, they've done studies with people who live in what would be considered not hygienic places, and their microbiome's amazing. They can handle everything.
It just occurred to me. I mean, we know what we're talking about, the microbiome. Maybe some people in our audience do not know what the microbiome is. So can you, in a few words, explain what the microbiome is and why it's important?
Good point, Danielle. So the microbiome is basically the atmosphere in our intestines, mostly our large intestines, that have I can't even remember the number. It's something like 10 trillion or 100 trillion different bacteria that survive, that live in our gut. Basically, it's 10 times the amount of cells we have in our body that we have bacteria. So, oftentimes people will say we're more bacteria than we are human. So these tiny bacteria tend to dictate our health or our disease. So there are beneficial bacteria, and there are also pathogenic bacteria. And ideally, we want to have a good balance between good and bad. I always think of our good bacteria as kind of being our first line of defense. It's our army that's sort of standing by, waiting to fight off any sort of pathogen that comes into our body. So if we provide all of the right foods to feed them, then they multiply in number. And those would be the good fibers, such as soluble fibers are great for the good bacteria to be able to multiply in numbers. So things like apple and pectins and things like there's supplements that some people take, but things like cooled white rice is actually really good for feeding the good gut bacteria. Cooled white potatoes, the resistant starches, things like onions and garlic and artichokes, dandelion greens. There's lots of different prebiotic type foods that will feed our good gut bacteria. But if we eat a diet that's high in sugar, that's going to feed the bad bacteria. And so when we have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, they end up, one of their sort of like byproducts are toxins. And these toxins are released and usually cause the integrity of the intestinal lining to be compromised. And so we end up getting what's called leaky gut or intestinal impermeability. And the gut can sort of like open up and different undigested proteins leak out into the bloodstream. And these are the type of things that can lead to autoimmune diseases, autism, ADD, ADHD. All of these things are dictated by the health of the microbiome.
Yeah, all the inflammation are linked to the leaky gut now. So it's extremely important to have a healthy microbiome.
Absolutely, yeah. So you go back 2,000 years ago from what Hippocrates said. All disease begins in the gut, and people are beginning to realize that more these days. But unfortunately, the mainstream recommendations do not realize that quite yet.
But I think people are getting more and more aware of there is something not quite right. And we read more and more about having fresh foods and vegetables, and you see more and more organic products in stores. So there is a little bit of an awakening. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and we talked a little bit about it before I started recording, was about attachment parenting, which is also dear to your heart.
Yeah. I often think my daughter applied to college this year, and she actually just made her decision today of where she wants to go. And she's actually going to a really good college close by. So I'm feeling really happy about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, attachment parenting, I think like, oh, I would just want like one day back with my babies, just one day where I was, tandem nursing them. And because before you know it, you like you said, you're a grandma. Yeah. Before you know it, time has gone by, and it's just such precious time. So yeah, attachment parenting to me sort of came about when, we talked about with Barry Sears. I think I ran into his book, his first book called The Baby Book, when my 17-year-old was a newborn, and it was my baby Bible. I swear. I was thinking like, wow, yes, it doesn't feel right for my baby to sleep in the other room, and I've got to get up and nurse her every single time that she wakes up, and it doesn't make sense for her to be carried around in a baby carrier. Like, she's unhappy. She wants to be close to me. So the second time around was much easier because I knew all of this information. But yeah, attachment parenting is, the whole idea of the child letting the parent know what they need and the parent responding to it. I think our culture is kind of in the mentality of, oh, don't spoil your child. You can't spoil your child by being physically close with them and loving them. It's giving them the innate needs that they are, that foundation of needs that they need to go out in the world and know who they are and feel grounded and be able to feel confident in who they are and their ability to perform in the world. And you know, I see it. The kids who grew up with attachment parenting, they are solid children who know who
Yes.
they are, and feel loved and feel confident in their opinions and know that they're valued, versus, you know, the kids who aren't always given what they are needed when they're young. And you know, those are the kids who are acting out, and those are the kids who, you know, might have behavioral issues. And then those might be the teenagers who don't have the confidence that you'd like to see your teenagers have. And then, you know, you move into adulthood, and those could be the people who, you know, are having troubles with their relationships, you know. So I just think, like, I wanted to give my kids the foundation to make them the best possible people they could be.
You know, when I was pregnant with my first one, we had foster daughters, so they had a spare bedroom, and I was so sad I couldn't have, you know, a bedroom for my baby. So I bought a bassinet and put it beside our bed.
Yeah.
And every few minutes I was, you know, looking at my baby, is she okay? Finally, I picked her up and she slept with me, and we didn't use a bassinet at all. And she is very independent and very confident. And all my children, I think, because I carried my first one for a year in the front or in the back, not so much my second one because she gained weight so so quickly just on mother's milk, but she became a butterball, so it was
Wow.
harder.
Yeah, yeah.
But I believe if you take the time to be attached to your children and have them close, they will be more confident and more independent later on in life. So it's well worth doing it.
I agree. I agree. Yep.
And we were talking, they do it in other countries. I was talking to you about Nepal, and you were talking about South Africa.
Yep, absolutely. And they don't even know it's a thing. They didn't have to read a book to know what it was.
We still have the instinct. We have to trust our instinct, our intuition, and not what the TV or the advertisement tell us.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. It was beautiful to see these women who lived in complete poverty, you know, living in these townships with people on top of each other and sharing outhouses for bathrooms, and you know, having nothing. I was telling you, they go to the beach and the kids are just sitting in the sand. They don't have blankets. They don't have the toys. But they're so happy. Babies strapped to mama with some piece of fabric. There's no fancy baby care
Exactly. Yeah.
they spent $100 on. They don't have $100. So yeah, it's you're right. It is instinct, and it's beautiful to go to these places and see that that it's still alive and well. And it just, I don't know, it makes me really sad that there is part of our culture. I think it's better now than when my kids were little. I was kind of the odd duck who always carried my baby. But yeah, I do see lots of young moms now walking down the road with baby on them, and I'm always just like, yes,
Yep.
way to go.
I even see fathers doing that. And in
Oh,
my time, we didn't have that so much.
absolutely. Yeah. I've got a great picture of my girl's dad with one of them on the front and one in the backpack in the back.
Yeah,
It was like,
absolutely. Yeah. So our time together is running to a close. Do you have a last word of wisdom?
yeah, let's see. I think that it's important to, you know, to just have these foundations where we're being the ones who, we have to remember that we are the ones who bring the food into the house. And it's important to introduce these foods to our children, by being a model, sort of like living how you want your children to live. And you know, I have some good friends who are concerned about the way their kids eat, and I keep saying, you're doing the right thing. You're showing them time and time and day in and day out that you're eating good foods. And I can't help but think eventually they're going to understand. They're going to be able to find that way. And I also think it's important for kids to notice how they feel after they eat certain things. And also to explain to children that some foods feed us in positive ways, like will give us brain power, will give us energy to be able to go out and play on the playground, or play our sport or whatever it is for your child. And some foods can give us like a quick burst of energy, and then we're feeling lethargic, and we don't want to get off the couch, and we don't want to stop being on our device, and we don't want to stop watching television. And I think it's important for kids to be able to make those associations. So maybe with parents' gentle help, children can help draw those associations with each other. I do have a quick memory I want to share of when my children were young. They used to go, unfortunately, both their grandparents have passed now, but their grandparents used to love to take them to Boston for the weekend. And of course, you're the grandparent who feeds the good food, but these are the grandparents who were like, oh, good, your mom's food not proud. So let's go to Dunkin' Donuts and let's eat pizza. And, they thought like they were giving my kids a special treat. But I tell you, by noon on Sunday, they would be like, Grandma, can I just have a salad? So I do think that, if you give your kids good food after a while, they might want junk food once in a while, but their bodies are going to learn to crave the healthy foods. But you kind of have to like push that reset button if it hasn't been like that for a long time.
And they learn to appreciate it. I remember going to restaurants and my kids would die for the salad bar. And people would look at me and say, how is it your kid eating that? I say, well, that's what they are used to eat. They don't eat the child's menu. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But they love the salads and the fruits. And I got a lot of comments and was able to talk to people. So you can be an example in that way too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Danielle, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for all the tips you gave us. And I hope we'll have you on our next program too. Excellent. So you have a great day, and I'll stop the recording now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.